Yo, what's up? It's your boy djl7. As you know, I have different candidates that I work with, different activists, stuff like that. Now, actually, this candidate today is actually my selection for midterm candidate of the year. This is Geoff Young. Amazing. We're gonna find out a little bit more about him. Jeff, how's it going, buddy?
Going fine.
That's right. And you were
How
out
are
here.
you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing all right, as good as I can, right? So the thing is that you ran for House of Representatives in Kentucky, and you've run several times. You run in the Greens, you run with Republicans, you run with Democrats. This is really a phenomenal case of being able to learn running from all the different perspectives, which is amazing, right? So, um, what did you got past the primary this time. You got 35% of the votes. That's very respectable for an anti-establishment candidate. The governor refused to support you. There's all kinds of other shenanigans going on, right? You actually have the leadership of Kentucky Democrats. You're holding them accountable. A lot of people, they voted for AOC. They got all excited. They said she'll hold them accountable, right? But she had no track record, right? But she had some, but you actually have much more, flagrant track record of taking on the establishment.
I think she caved in, basically.
Yeah, I think
Un
you would be a lot more liable to continue the
Unfortunately,
fight. Yeah,
I've never caved in.
I know. You have it,
So let
man.
me just go through the list of elections. The very first one I ran for was in 2012. I was a Green. I was a Green for 4 years, 2009 to 2013. So I ran as a Green against longtime Christian right Republican in the Kentucky House of Representatives. So that one, I learned that one, the Green Party in Kentucky is so tiny, it just doesn't matter. But I also learned that how to do the mechanics, how to run, how to file for office, and all that. 2014 was my first run against Andy Barr, Republican incumbent for the U.S. House in Kentucky's 6th congressional district. Democratic Party, I had one Democratic rival in the primary. The KDP, Kentucky Democratic Party, simply rigged it. They illegally rigged it to favor my opponent. And she lost to Barr by, 60% to 40. 2016, I ran against another establishment Democrat in the primary. I am not sure whether they rigged it or not, but she lost to Barr by 60 to 40.
Okay,
2018, what?
I have some experience myself working in campaigns and stuff like that. What methods would they use to? I could tell you, like one of the things they did. Some people saw the Veritas. Um, what is it? The documentary about how they were using nursing homes to generate. That's absolutely in play, 100% down here. They have politicians literally driving people from the nursing homes to the polling places in order to, if you think about the nursing homes, they're a lot of time funded by contracts. They're not for profits. They're not supposed to get involved politically. They absolutely are. So that's one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. I'm talking about things they did during the entire primary season, usually from about December of the previous year all through May or June of the next year. That's a long primary season, something like 6 months. And
So what are some things that they
what
might
they
do?
were doing, well, of course, their biggest job is to keep in close touch with wealthy Democratic Party donors. So they alert all their donors, look, this dangerous radical Geoff Young is running in the primary, and he's just a loose cannon or whatever they say. I don't know what they say, but this year they were saying, oh, he supports Russia in the war in Ukraine, whatever they can think of. But so they get their donors not to donate anything. They don't allow me to speak at their events during the primary. So if my county, Fayette County, Kentucky, has an annual fundraising dinner during the primary season, they only let their favored person come. And they just say, no, you're not invited. You can't come. If you come in the door, we will call the police and have you arrested. And they say the same thing when it comes to party meetings. So
Yeah,
Democratic Party headquarters
we're
in
actually experiencing the exact,
Lexington.
we experience the same exact type of suppression out here. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
okay.
And I really appreciate you bringing light to that. Not
Yeah.
only that, right? But the thing is that in order to try to combat something that we're involved in down here, something called Rep My Block. I don't know if you've seen that. You see how over here it says believe in yourself? Yeah.
Oh,
And then Rep My Block, okay, down here, there's different levels of government. There's federal, there's state, there's, local, like you have like county. Here, this county, some places have like a town. I'm not sure
mm-hmm.
how things are run in Kentucky. But remember that when you go to your federal, I mean, when you go to vote, right? Yeah, you go to a local area to vote. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times those elections are run by the local government, the most local branch of the Democratic Party government, whatever, right? Or Republicans,
Well, the party,
depends on who's in control in your area. Yeah, go ahead.
they get poll watchers, and they try to
Yeah,
get
the poll
people of
watcher's
their
okay,
party
but we're actually trying to get legislative and executive control over the group that actually runs the elections, aka ETA. So we're actually swarming our people into the county committee, trying to take over the whole election process itself.
yeah, good luck.
Not only that, but by having these people run for the most local, which is going to be maybe like town or the county, right? They can be a
Yeah,
political backdrop for someone like yourself to once you like. So now you did an incredible job of fighting, right? Yeah, almost single-handedly, right? Because you weren't really getting help from any real organization or anything really.
right.
And then you had to take that on, but you didn't really have a strong political backdrop behind you of other candidates, right? Who were politically aware, who had their own following, who's ready to kind of support you. So we're trying
No,
to
it's a good
find,
idea. Yeah, I
yeah.
hope it works there. I hope it
So
works.
we hope
Anyway,
that
then
you
I
can do
would
it
sue them.
simultaneously at the same time in Kentucky. You know what I mean?
Then I would sue these Democrats who rigged the primary. For
You have
example,
sued them.
in 2015, I
Yeah.
sued the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear's father, Governor Steve Beshear, and many other Democrats for violating a statute. And in Kentucky, we have a law that says the leadership of both major parties, any party that has a primary, may not rig it. It has to be up to the voters. It has to be a fair election, a primary election by the voters. And they violate that law. So, I've sued them several times. And then I get to the court, and the judges are corrupt.
Yeah, the judges have been appointed by these politicians.
Well, here they're
Yeah.
elected. In Kentucky, they're elected,
Okay.
and they're supposed to be nonpartisan, but you can easily find out whether a given judge is a Republican or a Democrat. Most of them are Democrats still, although that's beginning to change. Anyway, all the judges throw the case out even before discovery. I've never been allowed to conduct discovery against any of these defendants.
For
So
the people that are watching who don't know what discovery is, I know what it is. Why don't you just tell them what is discovery
yeah,
and why is that
okay.
like an relevant
All
point in
right,
the
so I
discussion?
file a lawsuit saying, these 35 people conspired to rig the Democratic primary against me in, say, 2019. And they immediately file a bunch of motions to dismiss. And it's almost okay. So motions to dismiss should virtually never be granted. In Kentucky, if I'm the plaintiff, they're always granted. So that's the end of the case. So discovery is, let's suppose that some judge says, no, I'm going to deny all of your motions to dismiss. The next stage is discovery, where I get to send them questions, they get to send me questions, which we have to answer. and they have to answer.
And
And I can take depositions, meet them in a room and videotape it and ask them, uh, did you call the police on this day to have me arrested simply 3 seconds after I walked into the meeting? But I've never been able to do that. The judges always throw it out. The Kentucky Court of Appeals is a cesspool of corruption.
absolutely.
The Kentucky Supreme Court is a smaller cesspool of corruption. And I've appealed many of these things. I've submitted several, like 6 or 7
We're struggling with the same thing over
petitions
here.
for certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court
Yeah.
after the Kentucky Supreme Court screws me over, and all of them have been denied, in one sentence. But that's because we have so many crooks on the U.S. Supreme Court. It's
I will
called the
actually,
shadow docket.
absolutely. That's how they got into those positions of power, by making the right people happy. So they
Yeah.
said, we're going to select this guy because he's going to do what's on our interest and push their own agenda. So,
Well, that's how
yeah,
abortion, Roe versus Wade got overturned. 6 of these Supreme Court members right now are crooks. They're partisan political Republican hacks who simply, they overturned Roe versus Wade for one reason, because they could. They had the votes, 6-3. And
yeah.
I read that decision. I read all their opinions, and it's a hack job. They
So
should have their licenses to practice law revoked and keep the 3 good, honest justices. And we can do fine with 3 justices for a while until they fill up
I
the
don't trust
gaps.
none of them, but hopefully, yeah, hopefully. So look, your story is fascinating, right? How you were able to, take on the establishment way back since, like, 2012 era, right? Running with the Greens already, just running third party is a form of resistance in itself. So the
Yeah.
thing is that, how were you able to win the primary? Because, I know you had took you like several chances, and you built yourself up into a point where they couldn't really get rid of you, because if they could have, they would have, right? So how
Oh,
did you pull that
sure.
one off? That's history.
Well,
That's
it was
historically
a
significant.
close. And so May 17th, 2022, the primary was pretty close, with 52 for me and 48% to my Democratic rival. I think I just wore them out. In 2014, 16, 18, um, uh, they got tired of spending all this money to beat me and then go on to lose to the Republican incumbent. They couldn't find anybody well known enough or wealthy enough to beat me. They found a 31-year-old high school science teacher, nice guy, uh, but absolutely no knowledge of anything beyond, like Kentucky. Uh, Very uninformed about foreign policy, and so I made a big effort to win the primary, and it worked.
Good job, buddy.
I wore them out.
Yeah. You also been through the process a couple of times, so you know when certain things have to happen at certain times, or how things
Yeah,
should look. Someone without
yeah.
experience will not really recognize those situations. So, so much props to you on that, right? So the thing is that, honestly, I'm quite excited to keep working with you. I know that it's just a couple days after the general election, and we're back in here ready to fight again. There's other people that are emotionally destroyed, which I get too. You've been there before. I'm sure that, it's not easy now, but you're still showing up to fight. And I,
Yeah,
I know that you're the type of guy that I've been looking for. Yeah, a long time. Very,
yeah.
very excited
Well,
to work with you.
in Kentucky, the election for governor and, attorney general, secretary of state, are in odd years. And in 2023, I am running for governor as a Democrat against Democratic incumbent Andy Bashir,
Okay.
who's also a crook, just like his father.
Yeah.
And I'm running for governor.
Now the
I've
thing is
already
that,
I've found a running mate.
yeah. Oh, you did.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank
During
you.
during the um during the midterm election season, a lot of our people don't actually vote. They're just, I mean, they're
Hmm.
not usually committed to that until like the presidential season. But you actually did get on some, and I was actually happy to see that. I did see that you actually finally did get onto Jimmy Dore. He finally woke up and paid attention,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
His interview
that
was
was a lot
okay
of
though.
fun.
I mean, I'm sure it was fun, but then he was like a little bit dismissive of you, considering I mean how much you've done for the movement and stuff like that, right? He didn't really recognize. He was just like, yeah, you're
Yeah,
so about like the rest of them, blah blah blah. Right? I mean, it's cool because he has broken ground on so many things, right? But hopefully he paid attention more. Do you guys get to talk more? Did you get to do? I mean, I would think that you're the actual right, because considering how he hates war, I would think that
yeah.
really once he got to know you, he would say, yo, this guy's really kind of special.
Well, I'm the kind of Democrat that he and a lot of other people wish the squad were.
The, yeah, because honestly,
I'm
but
a
they also
genuine
get caught up by a pretty
anti-imperialist.
face, right?
Huh?
Yeah, and they also get caught up by the squad's pretty faces, and unfortunately, right? Yeah, it's part of this hurdle, right? Someone like who looks like you or me doesn't really appeal, or for the marketing agency as well, man. F them, man, whatever, you know what I mean? But anyways, like, look,
Well, yeah,
hopefully
Jimmy
he
Dore
likes you and he
isn't
would
fooled
support
by
you in your
it.
further runs, right? Yeah, do you think that's possible? You met
Oh,
some
he
more people
might.
during this race, right? Yeah,
Yeah. I'd be happy to give him and his friends an update anytime. Be on the Jimmy Dore show again.
hopefully y'all
Sure.
have rapport. Y'all have like developed a little relationship, something like
I
that.
think probably, yeah.
I hope so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Hey, at
mean,
least you got
see,
on once, right? Yeah, it's more than I ever made it, so, what I mean?
yeah,
Maybe, yeah.
he was going on. He was going on, about Obama and all the campaign promises he broke. But then I got him like one level deeper, and he said, "Yeah, yeah, we're going down the tubes."
Just the fact that you also openly support Assange, does he know about that? There's very few candidates who get this far. Even the squad will not openly support Assange. Even Bernie Sanders
Yeah,
won't openly support Assange.
yeah, that's
That
too
might wake him
bad.
up, yeah, and say like, oh, this guy's a little
Anyway,
different. That's what opened me up, right? I was like, how do you feel about 45? But right away, you're like, yeah, and I was like, what? That's the title of my thing. I was like, what kind of Democrat is this, right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I was
right.
so
So yeah, and
go
there are
ahead.
plenty of other people I'd like to talk with on online. That would be fine. Shows and such.
What about local news media? I saw they were starting to cover your story. It is quite
They're
a story.
terrible.
Do you have any
They're,
like
they
local
hate me.
media who's a little bit more friendly to you now after finding about your story and
Well, there's one, a small independent newsletter called North of Center, Danny Meyer. Um, he interviewed Geoff7's, my field director, twice, and did two really nice in-depth articles about where Geoff is coming from, where I'm coming from, and actually got into the issues and our ideas. And he analyzed the Kentucky Democratic Party and is critical of them. So yeah, there's one alternative news outlet that is sympathetic.
well, I'd like to eventually work with him as well and then, help other independent media sources like ourselves really get into a place where they can provide better support for you in the next coming, election cycles or whatever your future projects are. Because, we need to really, I could just provide verbal support, but I need to really get hands in and really help
Mm-hmm.
build up this movement
Mm-hmm.
and not just you, but other candidates like yourself
Yeah.
that are ready to run, but the press just won't cover them. And, but you're really historic. The number of races you've run, your experience level, you should be, if there's any thought leader in this thing, right, you should be definitely one of them. Your experience,
Mm-hmm.
your knowledge, and just running campaigns, stuff like that. And
Well,
unfortunately,
one
these
campaign
pundits,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm launching is I want to be appointed by whoever is president, whether it's Biden or Kamala Harris or whoever is president. I want to be appointed Secretary of State of the United States.
to
That's
handle
the
the
job
foreign, yeah.
I'm going for in the executive branch, Secretary of State. And I would urge, some other people like Scott Ritter maybe as or retired Colonel Douglas McGregor as Secretary of Defense. Other people who have common sense. We don't have any common sense in power now.
Yeah.
They're just lunatics. They just make stuff up and then believe it.
There's unfortunately a lot of lunatic stuff going on in all the circles, all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just the most powerful ones. Now,
Yeah.
within the independent media, I would love to maybe organize a peace conference with you, right? I know that was a primary thing but unfortunately, the peace movement, even though I'm a child of imperialism, right? The thing is that, if you look at the Korean War, what effect that had on my family, the ongoing violence and me leaving at home at the age of 16, and all the hardship that I faced, and also my critical view of American imprisonment growing up as a minority in this country that faced discrimination because of imperialism and all the other downstream factors. You notice that in the anti-imperialism space, that my voice is not cared for, disregarded, right? Yeah, it's just certain important people, right, that get to speak or who get recognized, and not anti-white, but the fact of the matter is that, right, those voices are primarily white who haven't suffered in the same way as I have, who haven't looked at critically the way I have, and unfortunately, I would love to be a part of their conversations, but they've been blackballing me for the longest time. I'd still work with them, but unfortunately, I'm forced to have a separate peace conference. I'm ready to work with anybody in the progressive left. Once again, right, I'm not shutting them out, but I have to create my independent stuff because they just will not really provide any help of substance. So maybe we could organize a peace conference and continue to make suggestions and bring light to issues of national importance. Let's do that, man. The Secretary of State thing, I'm down.
Ended the Korean War? What's that, 70 years ago?
You know why? Because the U.S. purposely wants to destabilize the region in order so that they can keep their military, so they can pressure for economic and all this other bullshit. And I could talk about those things and the generational effects and how the U.S. is charging the bases in Korea, right? They're saying to the Korea, they're saying we want to put our military base here, and then want you to pay for, right? And you can look this up. So people want to say, oh, it's crazy. Trump's saying build a wall and we'll make Mexico pay for it. They're already doing this in Korea, but people just, they just don't want to talk about that. The same thing you talked about earlier, the same problem that you're facing with electoral politics, right? Actual on-the-ground actors out here working on disability issues, people in prison, stuff like that. They're pulling the same shenanigans off on us, but the press, they don't even dream of approaching these particular problems and ideas. It's just a little bit of, oh, this is what's in the mainstream media. Oh, that's nice. You're a little flash in the pan for a second, and then they get rid of you.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
that's
it's
only
like a
worth so much.
protection racket.
Yeah, it is.
We've got our bases, our troops, our ships, our missiles here, and you pay for it, and we'll keep you safe.
So hopefully we can I know like during the campaign we end up meeting the LaRouche people and getting a little bit closer to them, but we'll see how it works out with them. I'm not against working with them. I do appreciate their international bent, some of their connections, stuff like that. But once again, once someone who's important comes in, you'll find that someone like myself, and it's quite, if you think about in the anti-imperialism thing about how relevant my work is just as an activist and why that's really fueled all of my, all the discrimination that I face and all the things that I've had to live through, and my watching of this situation for decades, and you see who they're really promoting as future leaders of the movement. I have a lot of, once again, I'm not saying nobody's perfect, but we need to have a transparent and we need to have an accountable leadership. And unfortunately, we'll have to see what's up with that. So, yeah.
Okay.
So, talking about other leaderships, and much out, hopefully we'll do some stuff soon. I'll be contacting them. But what about Tulsi? The thing is that, right, Tulsi was also a strong and, anti-war candidate. And if there's any candidate who really embodied the, much more than, what's her name, Carrie Lake or whatever from Arizona. She's some newscaster, some fancy newscaster who hasn't really run multiple races like yourself, isn't suing the Democratic Party leadership like yourself, right? What's your thoughts on the whole Tulsi strategy of, maybe they got to, I hope they got back to you. They could maybe appear on your show, right? She's been having a lot of people on her podcast. What's going on? I know that, what do you think's happened with the Tulsi people?
Well, I think she was cheated in the 2020 primary for president. Basically, just shoved down by the establishment.
Yeah.
She had the only message, the only positions that were even slightly anti-war. And the media goes with the Democratic Party establishment, except for Fox, which goes with the Republican establishment usually. And so she didn't have a chance in the primary. It was not a fair thing. There should be a lot more debates. If she had been able to debate, 5 or 6 of them, well, let's say 2 at a time, Tulsi versus 2 other establishment Democrats, and have about 5 of those on national TV, she would have won them. She would have won those debates. She's asking questions like, why should we be enemies with Russia?
And considering how much
Right?
unfair situation she faced, and she has, addressed some of that. But what about in your race? Has she, in any way contacted your campaign or any way like,
No.
no, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, it is what it is. So I'm
Yeah, it
also
is.
working in the dark out here, but it is,
But
yeah,
okay, so if she runs, as an independent, if she stays an independent, which I think she is right now,
yeah.
uh, she has no chance at all. The
Because
two
yeah, because the
parties
ballot
have
access stuff like
have
that,
rigged the
absolutely.
whole thing so much that she'd have to be a multimillionaire even to get on the ballot in 50 states.
A lot of people don't
So
understand that. You're absolutely right. That's why Bloomberg still played the game, right? Remember, he ran as a
yeah.
Republican and became mayor of New York City. Then he became a Democrat. By using that infrastructure, and they really played a lot of ballot access games. People have this dream because they've never done this in their life. They've never been a candidate. They've never really worked the thing. And instead of
Mhm,
listening to someone like you or me, they're listening to some pundit out there,
mhm.
on TV or on YouTube who's never done this a day in their lives, but somehow they have the answers. Man,
Well, the
yeah,
answer is simple. Do you have $100 million? Go for it.
yeah, man, yeah.
That's it. I mean, that's the simple. Or do you have a lot of rich friends who between them can get you 100 million? Then
Yeah.
you can run. Uh,
She became a strong focus point for talking about like electoral reforms, things like that. And unfortunately, she could still be helping some of us out here. And Tulsi, I really, I may be busy with other stuff. Really, I'm calling and begging for you to help people like
yeah,
myself and
well,
candidates like
so
Geoff Young. We'll
if
see what
Tulsi
happens, though.
decides to switch parties and become Republican, I would certainly uh, do everything I can to promote her campaign
Well,
against, Trump and these other
she's
people.
trying to. Did you see that she tried to start some kind of independence convention?
No, I
Okay,
didn't see
yeah, you were
that.
busy in your race that time. I'm sure like you really weren't be able to like pay attention to everything that was going on. But when Tulsi actually first started making waves, she also had announced that she was going to do a separate convention in Texas that was going to be not about parties, but about straight independent candidates, stuff like that. So
Okay, well,
she might, right? But from her endorsements, to me, it looks like she's going Republican, right? And I agree with you from a practical standpoint. If she wants to run herself, that she would have to utilize that structure in order to really get ballot access on all the states. But she might not plan on running again. I don't know, right? Or she might be
well,
planning on
right.
running
Yeah, I
as
don't
a
know.
VP candidate under Trump or DeSantis. I think that's really the play. I think because the Democrats treat her so unfairly, right? It was just ridiculous. They wouldn't have her at the
Yeah.
convention.
Do you remember
Yeah.
if she ran in 2016 too, or just 2020?
I think it was just. I think 2020 was like a practice run, right? Yeah. But but
Okay, but that was probably the first time she ran for president.
yeah, but
And
still, she's run for
I
House.
voted for her in Kentucky. She was on the ballot. I voted for her in the,
We'll
is that
see, man.
true?
Right? Yeah.
2020, I was a Republican. I couldn't vote for her.
In the primary, right? Yeah.
That was my experiment on the other side.
Yeah, but she's actually we'll see. Yeah, she has a certain type she goes for, and I've learned that from
Yeah,
actually working with
yeah.
for a
She's
while. It is
okay.
what it is.
I
Yeah.
don't I don't like her position on abortion and whatever, but
Fighting
uh
war and fighting and bringing light to the unfair conditions that the candidates like you face, though,
Yeah.
Hopefully she could bring more light to that, right? Yeah. So I feel you on
Hmm.
that. Yeah, but I don't agree with all their positions either myself, and I'm actually, but I appreciate that, right? We should all have our own ideas, so that's
Hmm.
cool, man.
And
So
debate them.
absolutely, let's talk about the debate for a second too, right? We know that she was kept off the debate stage even after performing fabulously. Your debates are so interesting that even the governor's freaking out, right? So
Yeah.
how was your debate access in terms of this race? Like, did you get to actually ever?
Well,
Yeah.
okay. So in the primary, uh, KET, Kentucky Educational Television, often sponsors debates, and if only one, and they've got criteria to qualify to get into their debate. So the first two are always easy. Everybody meets the first two criteria. One, you have to be on the ballot. Two, you have to have an active website. Anybody can do that. Third one is you have to have raised or spent a certain amount of money by a certain date. So the date this year, let's see, the primary was May 17th. The cutoff date, I had to have raised or spent 50,000 by, I said 50? I think it was 50 or 25 by March 31. And I did. On my FEC reports, I made their criterion. And then I get a letter from their lawyer a couple days after the report is public saying, well, the number in that box is high enough, but all those expenses were not legitimate. They were based on these lawsuits from previous years.
Okay.
So we're not counting them. You can't be interviewed. And my Democratic opponent didn't make the limit either. So I was illegally kept out of the KET studio before the primary.
They do
I
this all the
consider
time. It's so
that.
disgusting.
I
Yeah.
didn't sue them, but well, I came close. I came real close to suing KET.
Let me tell you something
Then
else. Yeah, go ahead.
then when I won the primary, I had spent more by then. I met their 50,000 um, requirement easily. And they just had to, they decided that we've got to let this guy on. And the Republican refused to debate at all. He said, well, I'm going to uh, go right to the voters, directly to the voters. I'm not going to debate Geoff Young. So, so I did get interviewed once
Yeah.
before the general election, and that was a good experience. That was I think that helped me get a certain amount of votes in the general election, having appeared on KET.
You know that's unfortunate that happened to you. Let me tell you how bad it is in New York City, though. The
Okay,
thing is that now they implemented something here called publicly funded elections. Oh, it sounds so great, right?
it does.
But the thing, let me tell you the horrible truth. Yeah. Okay. So the fact is that in order for you to qualify, just remember how you don't qualify, right? They play these little games. So in order to qualify, you have to raise 250, a quarter of $1 million to qualify to get publicly matching funds. So only the rich are able
Yeah,
to get two hundred
that's
fifty thousand
no,
dollars.
forget
Right? Yeah,
it. That's
and
not publicly
it's
funded.
not.
That's a
And for
fraud.
absolutely for every $1 they raise, they get $8 back. They don't just get like another dollar. They get 8 times better than retail. So
So
this
the
is how the
rich
rich people.
ones
Yeah. So they
get
said it.
subsidized by the taxpayers,
Yeah.
8 to 1.
Yep, but if you're a
I
normal
get it.
grassroots candidate and you can't
That
get
is
$250,000 for a campaign, you're completely cut out. So you're watching as the millionaire gets his 1 million turns into 8 million, and you're there with your $20,000, and you're like, I get nothing. You know what I mean? And you watch
right,
as it's
right. That's a
complete. Yeah,
very bad
it's
law.
insane.
That's that's just uh, that's just a law that defeats the purpose of having a primary or an election at all. It simply rewards the rich ones who already have all the advantages. That's disgusting.
And we gotta share our technology, right? Yeah, the thing is that these corporate campaign consultants get to have a career. They get to work 10 years ago and see what shenanigans they did in New York, then take that to Kentucky. If they ever try to take publicly funded elections down there, be like,
Mhm.
yo, this is happening in New York, and you'll know about the shenanigans that they're trying to put in
Yeah,
place
yeah.
beforehand. And that's why it's so great to learn from you, right? Yet to see what's going on in Kentucky and to keep you involved in the process.
Hmm.
You're a very formidable person that's seen it from many angles, a very valuable part of any potential coalition that really wants to fight for
Yeah, yeah.
future
I'm
change.
one of the few people ever who's run for the same U.S. House seat as a Democrat and as a Republican.
Yeah,
That's almost unheard of.
absolutely. And I do
The
recognize
reason I
your,
did it
yeah,
was in 2020, switched parties to Republican is because the Democrats had rigged it so many times. I had given up, there. So another tactic they use, if I go into the building of the state party headquarters in Frankfort, Kentucky, they call the sheriff
yeah,
to arrest me, just for walking into the door, in through the door. They call the sheriff. That's ridiculous. In the 2019, there were four candidates for governor. Three of them could come and go all the time. They're having their last meeting, and I'm stuck outside with a sign saying, KDP, completely dishonest party. So,
hey man, I've been there, man. But honestly, your props to you, man. You're really doing your thing out there for real. Yeah. Um,
what?
I you're really doing your thing out there. You're really taking on the
Yeah,
establishment and not letting a lot of people just pass by and give up and stop fighting. But
yeah,
you've
yeah,
continued on, and that stick with it that's the fight that people really need to
yeah.
get these things through Congress and stuff, right? Yeah, people making a nice speech for like a couple of hours. That's right, but this guy keeps going, and he's not stopping for anything. They're calling the cops on him. I had cops called on me, and it's completely illegal, right? Yeah, you should call the cops back on them, right? Yeah, when the cops show up, be like, yeah, they're illegally
Yeah,
keeping me out of here.
yeah.
And yeah,
So every time I haven't been arrested for being inside a party building. So I have many times, let's say a dozen, 2 dozen times I've gone out, back, whatever the weather, meet the police, talk with them for an hour and a half while they're having their meeting inside. And, I ask them, well, they're the ones who are violating Kentucky's election laws. You should be investigating and arresting them. But
yeah.
that doesn't get very far.
Actually, so just to take it back to, remember you said that you originally ran with the Green Party, and then you said you realized that Green Party wasn't very viable, and I'll actually break down some numbers just for my audience right now. The fact of the matter is that I think Green Party has maybe 100,000 members, but if you look at the Democrats' installed base, that's 44 million, more than 44 million members. When you compare 100,000 to 44 million, you gotta people that's a problem. They'll make these statements, but they're not ready. And as a Green Party member, I was ready to take on those odds, 100,000 versus 40 million, and ready to do the work that it would take to possibly win it. Most people have no. Once they see that amount of work, they will run right to one of the two major parties, right?
Hmm.
Not saying that that's the answer, but the fact of the matter is that the way that you did it right, of taking them on and maintaining your integrity, right? Yeah, and holding the leadership accountable instead of playing along and playing games. That's
Hmm.
exactly what we need, man. So
Well,
props to you. Yeah.
so one idea is called Dem Enter.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so I have experience with both major parties running as a candidate. Both major parties are 100% corrupt. And let's say, virtually completely evil. Both parties. I no longer think there's any difference between the two. So I'm asking people, independents, libertarians, socialists, Marxists, to join their local Democratic Party and take them over.
Absolutely. With that county committee plan, like we said earlier, right,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
establish control over the election process itself. You
right.
cannot count on these people. They barn, the elected primary winner, right, from events or in the past, right? Yeah, you can see that he has political support now, getting over 30, about 35%, right, almost over a third of
Mm,
Kentuckians in his district believe that this guy should be the leader, but yet right? Before he wasn't even able to access certain meetings, and they're calling the cops on him for no reason and an inconsistent reason, and we need to hold them accountable to that. And absolutely, yes. So we ran with the Green Party, and you saw the numbers, how absurd they are, right? And now you're learning about the corruption of the Republican Democrats from being in the process. What do
Yeah.
you think are the most? A lot of my audience like out there, they don't know, just like the pundits don't know. What are some of the other things that you can tell us about the? You already outlined in today's thing about like how they control access to meetings, things like that.
Hmm.
What are some of the unique differences between Republicans versus Democrats in terms of the way they control things?
The same. They use the
Same.
same tactics. There's no difference. Um, so since in Kentucky, the um, Democrats are control more of the media. I just don't get interviewed by mainstream media. I get interviewed by alternative. But so I'll switch to the legal aspect of it. Judges are supposed to be nonpartisan in Kentucky, which means that they don't announce, they don't run, I am the best Republican judge. They just say,
They
it's
totally are, I'm
nonpartisan.
sure, though. They
But
totally
but
are.
they, but what I found was through experience, it doesn't matter what party the judge is.
Yeah.
They all protect the establishment.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a judge in 2020 when I sued Andy Barr for rigging the Republican primary. I sued the Republican Party of Kentucky for rigging it. I had a Democratic judge, actually was a friend of mine, uh, and he said, like in the first hearing, Geoff, why don't you just run again? Why are you doing all these lawsuits? They really don't like you, meaning the Kentucky Court of Appeals and the Kentucky Supreme Court really doesn't like me. And it's true.
Yeah.
But he was trying to convince me not to take them to court and not to take the Republicans to court. And this is a Democrat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what party they all protect the establishment. They don't care. They don't like anybody
Yeah.
turning over their apple cart.
Outside of the elected officials, there's a whole nother breed of people that are just the bureaucracy that sits there from one administration to the next.
Yeah,
Also, we see these corporations, they don't care who the ruling person is or whoever is watching their industry, Republican or Democrat. They're shoveling them money and they're
yeah,
giving them jobs after they leave office. And
yeah.
they
They
consult,
buy
yeah,
them both. They buy
absolutely.
both candidates.
Yeah. And they don't want anybody turning off their gravy train, aka someone with the actual conscience, someone who's not going to be do as they're told, right? Someone like
Exactly right.
yourself. Someone like yourself, yeah. So,
Somebody they don't control. That's
absolutely.
their worst nightmare.
That's the one thing they can't have, right? Yeah, straight up. That's
Yeah.
why I'm gonna be working with you. I'm really focused on. You'll see that my Candidate of the Year Theo Chino. I'm still working on projects with him, and I'll be working with the best of the people that I meet to try to continue to make change happen. So the thing is that as people now, we talk about some ways that they can start to help candidates like yourself. They can start to pay attention to candidates. They can start to sign up for independent news media so they don't have to just get the propaganda that the mainstream media is giving them. For
Mhm.
what other things can people do between now and like, future elections or just any actives in general, right, to help candidates like yourself that are anti-establishment?
Well, I think we need various movements. So one thing I've called for is impeach the 6 partisan Republican hacks on the US Supreme Court who overturned Roe versus Wade. So we need a kind of like nationwide campaign, impeach the 6 and keep the 3 good ones.
I think that's gonna be a
Uh,
tough call, man, but maybe, yeah, maybe that could work. We'll see if that would really get
well, I
support.
haven't heard any better ideas. The only idea I've heard, oh, well, let's increase the number of Supreme Court justices from 9 to 13. That could fail. That could backfire. instead of getting outvoted 6-3, we could get outvoted 10-3 or 9-4.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good solution. But impeaching the bad ones goes directly to the heart of the problem. They acted like corrupt partisan politicians. They act like that, they should be impeached, like a politician gets impeached. All right, so then another campaign, impeach any president who becomes a war criminal.
Yeah.
And that would mean every president, at some point in their term, every single president since 1946, after World War II, has been a war criminal, an aggressor, by the definition set forth in the UN Charter, which is the foundation of international law. So impeach all war criminals. Also, every Secretary of so-called defense since 1947, every Secretary of State, all of them have been war criminals, and every national security advisor.
According to the Constitution, they should actually consult with the American people, or at least, Congress, to
Congress.
get these wars going. But they
That's
don't.
right.
They just make these executive decisions, and it's like, what?
And suddenly we're in a war.
Yeah.
Right. So let's see what else. I mean, there are various campaigns. So last week I took out a doing business as license in Lexington. Went down to the town hall, and I started an organization called Democrats for DeSantis,
Okay.
because Trump is a war criminal, Biden is a war criminal, Ron DeSantis of Florida isn't yet. I mean, he's very likely to become one if he ever
I see.
becomes the president. He'll become a war criminal in a matter of weeks, but
Right.
he isn't one now. So
We'll see if
I
that
want to
works.
see
Yeah,
if I can.
that's a tough strategy though, because the don't say gay may actually turn off some voters, but it may attract others. But once again, right, we're just trying to make our little political step
Yeah,
our foot in the door because we don't
I
have
want to
power.
establish the principle,
Yeah.
a bedrock principle in American politics. You become the president, you commit war crimes, you commit aggression, you overthrow some government, you get
Yeah.
impeached, and you get convicted and thrown out of the White House. That's the principle, and it may have to happen a few times. Suppose we can impeach
Yeah, but the
Biden.
impeachment process has to start in Congress, and then we have to win Congress
Yeah.
seats. So that's going to be a
Well,
tough one, and they're going to play their own partisan politics game. So we'll see.
it
But
doesn't matter how
yeah,
tough it is.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, we got to keep.
I'm talking about something that could really make a difference.
Yeah,
So let's suppose there's, enough people in the US House willing to impeach a president who becomes a war criminal. All right, then the vice president takes over, in this case, Kamala Harris. We give her some time, and if she becomes a war criminal too, if she fails or refuses to stop our ongoing illegal wars of aggression, impeach her.
I'm surprised Biden's still alive. To tell you the truth, you know what I mean? He seems so ready to go at any moment. He's falling
Yeah, I
asleep.
don't
Yeah,
think he'll last to the end of his first term. I think he'll step aside or
yeah.
retire or whatever, however they want to frame it.
And let Kamala
And
have it for a
I think
while.
we'll have her for a while, the first female president ever, taking over, and we'll see how she does.
No, this is an extremely common tactic that's used here in New York City. In fact, 1/3 of all elected officials, they get around the primary process and install a leader. Actually, Kathy Hochul is another similar example, right? I mean, I know that when candidates when electeds leave office early due to being fired, maybe they retire early, instead of there being a primary, a committee holds a special election
Yeah,
and a lot of establishment candidates that you're gonna find out that are even famous get in through this particular back door into politics.
right. But
So
then they
yeah,
have to face an election
the general.
eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, general election.
Well,
Oh,
they have to face a special election. You're right. They have to face a
special.
special election, but then, this is better done in strongly controlled. Like here in New York City, the Democrats control a lot. So Once you put the Democrat in, it's almost like you're putting them into office. It's almost as
That's
good.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. In Kentucky, it's kind of there's still real competition
Yeah.
um, in
Also,
most races.
also, if you think about it too, right? If let's suppose that I'm a corrupt governor, right? Yeah. And then let's say that I usually use Boba Fett over here. Let's say this is my corrupt lieutenant governor. So when I step down, the corrupt lieutenant governor can continue on all the corrupt dealings with the different businesses. That way, when this guy runs right for his office in the general, right, after a year or two, what's going to happen is that the business will say, he's a reliable guy for my corruption. I'm going to
Right.
fund his reelection campaign. And
That's
then the
right.
billions of dollars goes to help the non-insurgent candidate. By the way, also, we talked with Jonathan Martin, one of the few third-party professors in the nation, and when you take on the establishment power, when you have like Kentucky, where Republicans have been entrenched for a while, what happened that the other party, right, Democrats may become neglected a little bit and become a de facto resistance party. So you were able to avoid the third party, right? Yeah, what do they call it again? The spoiler effect by just taking over, right? Yeah, the less control, the less powerful party at the time, which wasn't really getting as much stuff injected into it because I guess they just kind of figured the Democrat, which provides a unique opportunity for you for a upset. So
Hmm.
I'm definitely gonna be. I'm sure they're watching you now too after your success in this primary. Yeah, and at 35%, that
Yeah,
could
they're
easily become
probably
40%.
watching and groaning. Oh no, he actually is running for governor. Oh no, not this.
And running that DeSantis thing, if you might be able to run a competitive Republican and win the Democratic primary again, you might be able to split a Republican vote right there and then move
No,
your
if
way
I
right in.
if I if I win the Democratic primary for governor, I'm going to beat all the Republicans.
I hope so, man. I hope so. Yeah.
They're all women haters.
Well, I hope that the women come out and vote, right? Yeah, they'll be convinced to
They're
do
all
otherwise.
100% wrong and immoral on abortion.
Well,
And
I almost feel like that whole thing has been managed by,
well,
by the
yeah,
tech
by the
giants and
Democrats.
yeah, right, yeah.
So
So it's because they didn't really fight
I'm
when this,
here to
yeah.
unmanage it. I'm here to make it a real issue.
That's awesome, my man. Yeah. So you're already announcing your governor's run, and I thank you for announcing on my channel. I'm glad to be and so you guys are starting your process there. Your mailing list, I guess you could reach out to them and say, look, start supporting me for governor.
Yeah, we got the mailing lists and
I'm
all
excited.
that.
Yeah. Okay. That's a powerful position. And you said that happens in 23. That sets you in
Yeah,
a powerful position for 24 to have
yeah.
some influence on the presidential, how things go down there. That's that's a very smart political move. I like what you're doing, man. I'm gonna try to get you together with other candidates. We'll see how many of them participate, but we're gonna break out early on this one. I'm so excited. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for talking with me tonight.
No doubt. It's been my pleasure, man. Hey, just before maybe people share the website, your social media, so people can stay in contact with. Once again, you're checking out I talk to so many candidates during this cycle, all over the nation, all the parties, and this is my selection as the number one candidate in the whole entire election cycle, and I will be working with him guaranteed. How can people follow your work? Young for KY?
Yeah. YOUNG, the number 4, KY.com. Young for Kentucky. I'm about to redo it to switch it from Congress to governor.
Yeah, going through the petition process. Yeah.
I have some work to do on that.
Well, the site looks great, man, and God bless and congratulations. Yeah. So go to that website, sign up, to
I'm
volunteer.
also on Twitter a lot. Jeffrey Geoff Young.
I know
So
that
you
also
can find me on Twitter. I even have a blue check mark for, until Elon Musk decides to take it away.
you're also pretty active on Facebook as well, right? Do you have a
Yeah,
Facebook
yeah.
group for people to join?
Um, Jeffrey M. Young and the number 9 after that. But just look up Jeffrey Young
Do you have a
and
group called Progressives for Peace or other things like that?
yeah, yeah, there's one called Progressives for
Is that
Peace.
your group?
Yeah,
Cool. All right. Yeah.
yeah, I
So
started that I don't know, like 5, 6 years ago.
there's a lot of progressives. There's a lot of old school cats who are very fierce anti-war, and the press is doing everything to quiet that down, but that is a rallying cry, and that's starting to really go up. So I'm going to really start pushing people towards that. You've been a leader in that space for a long time, as in terms of fighting against war, and I really appreciate you for that. Being once again a son of U.S. imperialism and the effects of that, I am deeply touched, and
Mhm.
I know the importance of your work. The suffering that I face in my life has really been extreme, and people like you that are really fighting that. Thank you so much.
All
F the
right.
fake shit, man. You're the real